Okay. All right. Let's see.
You take care.
Guys. You too. All right.
Just remember wasn't.
It looks like I have my guest here as well, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see. Montre, is that you?
Yeah, this is me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay.
Right.
Hi, everybody. This is Montre Bible.
Hey.
Well, I mean, I've known you've done what? You've done a lot of things over the past. You're writing a couple of books.
Yeah.
Done some modeling. You've got some tattoos.
Yeah.
You used to have dreads. Do you still have dreads?
Yeah, I still have dreads. And that's, I mean, if we're talking about discrimination, I guess that's a whole ball of wax by itself, you know.
I know.
I
know you have a little bit of every, like, little, the only thing that you don't have in your corner is a woman, you know? It's the only discrimination thing that you don't have against you right now, right?
Right. But, if we talk about, you know, people who discriminate, because we both live in the South, and, you know, there's a certain, I guess, order of things, of how things are done. And anytime you want to, I guess, step outside of that box and say, hey, you know, I'm going to express myself in a certain way, you know, and it's maybe visually, you know, I think you get a little bit more smack than you would if you lived in some of the East Coast or West Coast cities. And I don't know, it makes it kind of difficult. And having just moved back here, back to Dallas from Los Angeles, it's been almost a readjusting you have to do.
So how is California, seriously? Is it totally falling apart? I mean, like what you see in the news, like the economy's totally gone. I mean,
yeah.
It's bad enough here, but
it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad out there. I had to move back because I could not find work out there. When I first moved out there, it was pretty easy. I got a job pretty quickly, and then I got laid off, and I was on unemployment for about a year. And nobody was hiring. I couldn't even get a job at Starbucks or Denny's.
Yeah, you have too much experience, and they can't hire those that have none. So.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's the same problem. I think anytime I look online for employment, which I'm still on unemployment as well, but every time I look, the only thing they have are commission sales jobs.
Yeah. So that's all they were hiring for. Well, they weren't really hiring too much at all unless you had a master's. So I just hightailed it out of there and moved back to Texas because I think California's bankrupt right now, and they got a new governor. So we'll see what's going to happen with that. Arnold Schwarzenegger didn't do good with that. But you know, Texas is doing actually very well. You know, despite all the economy issues, I was very surprised.
Surprisingly, for being in the South, as many places I've gone, well, okay, not every place in Texas, I'll take that back. Dallas area in general is pretty much, I guess we're kind of real lenient on, you know, people being different here, but you go slightly outside of Dallas, and that's pretty much the exact opposite. We're in the heart of the Bible Belt.
Yeah. I think things are slowly changing with people, but it's still way behind when it comes to, like, acceptance nationwide, you know. And I'm thinking, like, come on, people. You know, people will look at me like, hey, so what are those braids? And they're like, no, these are not braids. It's like, you know, they're obviously dreads, you know. And so it's very interesting how even people come at me. And I guess now people are more interested. They're asking me questions at least. But I've had dreads for, I'd say, about almost 10 years. And when I first got them, there weren't too many people in Dallas with them. You know, even with African Americans, there weren't even too many people that had dreads. Most people were like, you know, you cut your hair off, you have a nice little haircut, and that's it. You know, so if you grew your hair out, it was kind of like, I guess, you're doing something different. They don't know where you're from. They think you're from New York or from the island somewhere. It's like, well, where are you from? I'm like, I'm like, do you smoke weed and stuff? Do you sell weed? I'm like, that's a horrible stereotype that I sell weed, you know. And they would just assume I sell it, and I'm like, no, I don't sell weed. You know? So it's very interesting just how people come at you. And
so being in modeling, was it easier to get into that, like being different as opposed to, I guess, looking like everybody else, or did that make you had to actually find a niche and convince people that was a good look, or?
When I first went in, I was doing acting, and it's two different worlds because acting and modeling. I went in with my agent to get into acting here in Dallas, and actually I was having more problems with that than I was with modeling. So they started putting me up on model jobs, and I as a young kid, I was a little frustrated. I mean, I'm glad to get paid for that. Modeling is really cool to do. But that's not what I wanted to do. And I'm like, well, why do I keep getting all these model jobs, but I can't get any acting jobs? And, of course, that's the business. It's all about how I look. It's about my hair. My hair is too long or whatever. So I understood that. But, because, Hollywood and TV and all of that, they're allowed to discriminate because they're looking for a certain look. And, they'll make assumptions about what type of character you are based on your look. And I guess, they do that based upon how we as society develop our assumptions. But, they weren't giving me too many parts, and as in, like, acting roles. And they was like, well, we're going to put you in modeling. So I got into modeling rather easily because they coined me as, the hip-hop look, the hip and trendy guy, and there's not too many of that. There's not too many guys that look like that here in North Texas. So I kind of was their representation of the East Coast guy, the skater dude. So they at least had one here in the South that could at least take those pictures. So most of their photos didn't look so generic. Because having dealt with some of the models out here in North Texas, most of them got that pretty corporate look, so they were kind of stuck with a certain type of ad they could do. Yeah,
conservative, very conservative.
So they've really been trying to get models that look different, and most of the ads, surprisingly, here in Dallas and North Texas, some of the little stuff, not the major stuff, but some of the little stuff that you see around billboards and stuff is done by Dallas models. So.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm starting to see a little bit more diversity, I guess with hairstyles, and I think that's mainly because women in general are starting to, and I think that's where it begins with women. Women are starting to spread out and about how diverse they get with their hair. They're not caring as much. They're starting to be a little bit more creative, and few men are starting to be more diverse.
I think it's a little bit harder for men to do that than it is for women because men are pretty much set to exact standards, and women are allowed to be a little bit flighty, I guess, is it's kind of almost expected.
Yeah, I think when guys start experimenting with their look, or or just want to be slightly more eclectic, it makes it difficult, I guess, to make ends meet, and get a proper job. I remember I had cut my dreads at one point during my 10-year growth period, and I decided I'm going to just do an afro because I thought, maybe something will change in my life. Acting-wise and theater-wise, my job stopped, and so I started I got a job doing like a little corporate kind of company, and it was really boring. I hated it. And definitely not the type of job I wanted. But I was doing like auto financing and stuff, and it was.
I was doing the same thing. That's my last job. Subprime, auto loans.
Yeah, I was getting paid, but I was just like, this is so boring. And so
it makes you feel bad too, because you're actually the things that they do to people is just not right.
Yeah. It was just frustrating me. So I think as any artistic person, if you're any type of creative mind and you get bored, that is the worst place to be. So what happens? You start experimenting and doing things. So I decided, okay, I'm going to grow my hair back. which is I guess was the wrong thing to do because
you got fired.
As soon as I put my hair in twists, it was like, oh, I don't think you're a good fit for this job. I'm like, what did I do? But,
you show any bit of individuality and any bit of creative soul, then they squash that immediately. You don't fit into the paradigm of what they expect a controlled society to be.
Exactly. Well, now they can really wean you out because, like, when you're trying to look for a job, you have to take all these personality tests. And while you're doing your application, and then you look online, and it's like, okay, take this 1-hour test. And so you take the test, and they ask you all these questions, and they ask you in different ways. And they basically figure out your personality. And then at the end, they're like, oh, you're not really qualified for this job at the end of the test. I'm like, what? How did you figure that out? But, I've taken some personality tests on my own online, and I found out that I'm kind of a right-brain thinker, and that's the creative type. Those are the creative artist type.
In fact, including if you ever come up with an answer and you don't know the answer to it, it's always, right brain. I remember that from high school. One of the few things I remember about psychology and sociology.
Right. So it's just like, I think that's how they wean them out. They don't want creative types, and I think that's what's wrong with society is that they're trying to wean out the creative people out of the companies. And I think sooner or later,
because if you don't have a job and you don't have a way to do things, then you can't make a change in society. And if you're a creative thinker and you actually stand up for who you are, then you tend to actually look behind, between the lines or behind the head puppet to see what's actually going on.
Well, I discussed this with my mother because I think my whole family were all kind of right-brain thinkers, and I said, what right-brain people think, we when we see a problem, we try to figure out, like, okay, why is there a problem, and how can this be done differently? And most corporate companies don't want you to think outside the box. They don't want you to be creative, and they don't want you to try to find answers. They want you to do what you're told, and they want you to find.
Which is they train you for that in school.
Yeah, exactly. And they're training kids now. They want kids just to do what they're told. Now, I think with our generation, why we have so many creative types, because if you look at our generation, the one we grew up, and actually we're Generation X. You don't hear too much about Generation X anymore, right?
No, now you just hear Generation Next.
Yeah, but we're Generation X. Man, we grew up in that experimental time, and I think they were experimenting, trying to figure out, okay, what's going on with this group of teens,
Yeah, it was right before even school uniforms were instituted in most public schools. So right before, literally a year or two before.
I've been telling people that. They did uniforms right after, around the time we graduated.
Yeah.
They didn't have uniforms then. We had plenty of creative classes. We had a lot of art classes. We had a lot of, whatever we wanted to do, we could do it. Now they pretty much tell kids what to learn, you know what I mean? I went back and I went to visit one of my old teachers, and she was like, she says the way we taught you was totally different. She said even as teachers, we had the freedom to teach you guys so many things, and now they are so reprimanded, and they have to train these kids for these tests.
Yeah.
Because they have so many.
Recitation, that's all it is. They're not actually learning. They're just reciting.
Yeah, they don't want to go outside the box.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's really scary with the I won't even call it education, the training that they're giving these kids nowadays.
And it looks like a prison. If anybody's ever seen, I love it. You have to stay in the single file lines. You have the uniforms. You're run by bells. You have a short period of time to eat your food. You better hurry. You better run to your next class. And for us at Skyline, I don't know. It was so huge. And for those that don't know, Skyline was like one of the biggest schools ever.
Yeah.
We had about 4,000 students.
Yeah, it was a lot of kids up in there.
Yeah, graduating class is almost 700, so it was huge. And we had only 6 minutes to get through how many buildings? 6 buildings?
6 buildings. I think it's bigger now. I'm like, oh goodness, I don't know how they do it. But it's they definitely, they were experimenting and seeing what was going on with our generation, and how can we change this, and they did it. They have readjusted the system, and I try to work with kids sometimes, and like, hey,